The Albanese government has promised to slash HECS debts by 20% if re-elected. It's also promised to lower minimum repayments and lift the threshold before students must begin paying back the debt, as part of a pitch aimed at young Australians struggling with the cost of living. Bruce Chapman is an Emeritus Professor of Economics with the Australian National University and is the architect behind the 1989 student loan system. And he joins us now for more on this. Professor Chapman, thank you for your time. What do you make of these promises by the Albanese government? If we can first go to that 20% discount, who would get it and is it a good idea?
It's a good idea. There's a general agreement that the HECS debts are too big. They're much bigger than was envisaged all those years ago. This is a one-off 20% cut. I can understand in the whole context of the overall level of the debts. Down the track, there needs to be attention placed on the relative prices. The former government in 2020 changed the prices very radically, and in particular, the prices and the charges for humanities graduates more than doubled. I think that's inequitable and can be fixed. So that's something for attention down the track. I think the government is aware of that. The most important and positive thing that's happened in the announcements on the weekend is the increase in the first threshold of income in which people have to start to repay their debts. It's currently about $54,500. That means that a lot of people earning between, say, 55 and 65, they're not well off. In those periods, they're obligated to repay HECS now. The system was not supposed to be like that. So I think the most important and positive thing is the increase in the first threshold of repayment to $67,000. It's also accompanied by a difference in the way the debt is collected to make it more reasonable and sensible to have it based on marginal income, like income tax. That's been a problem with the system for a very long time. I don't think it's had major implications, but it should be fixed, and that's what the government is doing.
So you welcome these changes. Do you worry about any unintended consequences here? I mean, in terms of choices of study, for example, or any broader economic impacts?
Generally speaking, when HECS prices change, students' reactions are very small. HECS doesn't actually affect what people want to study and what they want to do with their lives and how they want to be in a professional sense. It's very important for reasons of equity and fairness, but there won't be unintended consequences here in terms of people selecting what they want to study. That's there. That's what they want to do. That's what they care about. But what the implications are is essentially that it'll be more equitable, particularly increasing that first income threshold to $67,000.
This 20% debt slashing, it doesn't apply to those who are yet to embark on their higher education, although there are those other changes put forward, as you said. But, I mean, are university fees still just too high?
I think generally they are, particularly for, as I said, the humanities and other courses down the track. When the previous government in 2020 changed these prices, they were changed hugely radically in ways that people who thought about and helped design the system like me were kind of surprised and quite disappointed. So those relative prices need to be addressed. The University Accord review recommended that very strongly. The government is setting up what's going to be called the Tertiary Education Commission to look at that. So that's going to affect people down the track. But as you implied, the 20% cut is a one-off. I think it's welcome. The long-term solution is to fix up those relative prices.
And if students have debt for longer, firstly, will they end up paying more? And secondly, will it impact their ability to borrow? Because I know the opposition has raised this concern. One of the recommendations from the university's accord was to get banks to somehow treat these student loans as different debt. But is that realistic?
Well, it should be realistic because HECS is a very different debt. If you're not earning over the threshold, you don't pay anything. So it's completely unreasonable for commercial entities to treat it as if it's a credit card debt. What needs to happen is that the banks interested in eligibility for mortgages need to look at a graduate's disposable income after the payment of HECS. And when that happens, the consequences of having a HECS debt are quite different. They're much more benign than they would be, for example, with a credit card debt. If the banks aren't doing that at the moment, then the government needs to ensure that they do that, because it's quite unreasonable to treat HECS debt as if it's normal debt. It's protected debt and it's income contingent. So to put it in the same lump as all other debt is a misunderstanding of basic finances.
Bruce Chapman, Emeritus Professor of Economics with the ANU and the architect behind the 1989 student loan system. Thanks for taking the time to speak with us.
My pleasure.